Hello and welcome back to another episode of More Than a Business Live. I am your host, Mitch Case. I'm the proud owner and founder of More Than a Meal, where we work with organizations to help them strengthen their most valued relationships by showing gratitude and appreciation one meal at a time. This live show has been something that I've been working on for a long time, and my team has helped me kind of put this together with the intent and pure purpose of helping highlight the individuals that are working hard day in and day out to make it their organization, whether they started that organization or they work at that organization or potentially even serve other organizations, a way to really show that these organizations are doing it right. They are truly more than a business, and they want to make a positive impact in all the work that they do. And by doing so, I get to meet some pretty amazing people along the way. And our next guest is nothing short of amazing. With this, I've had the brief chance to have a conversation with Samantha a few times. And as I kind of read off her bio real quick, you'll start to recognize just how involved she is. And I know from our initial conversation, we're going to talk a lot about her place of work, Skywalk Group, which I'm going to let her tell you more about it. But Samantha is the Human Resources Business Director over at Skywalk Group and was part of the 40 Under 40 award recipient in 2019. She is certified senior professional in human resources with an expertise in strategic planning, risk management, employee relations, and employment law compliance. That is definitely not my forte whatsoever. But Samantha also serves on the HR Advisory Committee of United Way and East Central Iowa, and is the member of Robbins Civic Club. And Samantha, you do a lot of things. I love this. And she is part of the Eastern Iowa Human Resources Association. So without further ado, I do want to welcome Miss Samantha Rogers to More Than a Business Live. Welcome to the show, Samantha.
Thank you, Mitch.
Awesome. Why don't you go ahead and kind of give us a brief overview of what it is that you do and maybe a little bit about Skywalk Group, and then hit us with something maybe that we should know about you that we don't already know.
Sure. Well, I work at the Skywalk Group. I've been there just over 8 years, so I'd like to consider this my forever home and a lifetime career. So
Yes.
I'm very happy with the Skywalk Group. But we do three things. Our biggest department is recruiting. So instead of kind of a contingency model, in which case you're paying what are called headhunters to go find someone, and then they say, great, we hired you a controller at $50,000. We'll take 20 to 30% of that salary as a bulk fee. Instead of doing that, our model is a la carte. So you get an hourly rate and you're paying for the process for someone to go find you. So that's what differentiates our recruiting model here at in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, where we are out of. And that tends to be just so awesome because you're renting a recruiting teammate. So if you don't already have someone on staff, you get to have one and just pay for the project. So, and you can imagine if you are hiring multiple people for the same position, you're paying for the process. We go out and interview 6 people and say these 3 are ready to go. You could pick all 3 and your cost per hire is outrageous.
No different. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yep.
Yeah, so the recruiting process, that's our biggest department. And then when I started 8 years ago, there are 2 other departments, and I was a person of one. So that is our HR consulting field, and then training and development. So in the time that we have been there, I have gone from a department of 1 to a department of 9. So we're still pretty small.
Okay, got the
help.
help.
We're a woman-owned company right out of Cedar Rapids. So yeah, we've grown, and the HR consulting looks similar to the recruiting model. You rent an HR teammate. So even today, right before I got on the call, I had a client that I haven't worked with in 2 years. What we did for them 2 years ago was they are a construction company, and they wanted their handbook, their employee handbook, translated to Spanish. And we do Spanish translation. And we helped them with that so that they could appeal to their population. 2 years later, in that brief time we built that relationship, I got a call from the president today saying, hey, you helped us with that one HR thing 2 years ago. I think we might need to look into it and do an investigation because someone just brought up an allegation. So we like to joke and say once a client, always a client. But you build relationships with people, and then they keep you in the back of your mind, and you're just here, just rent us when you need us kind of thing.
Yeah. And kind of with that, let's go ahead and kind of jump into maybe a personal story around how Skywalk Group has maybe had an impact on an individual within the organization or one of the organizations you serve, or potentially even within the community that you serve. And before you just do that, I forgot to kind of ask everybody that is tuning in, go ahead and say hi and where you're listening from. And if you have questions throughout this, go ahead and type those into the comments, and we'll be sure to try and get to those at the end of the show. So Samantha, maybe tell us that personal story into the business side of things.
It's when you prepped me for this, it's too hard to just pick one.
Yes,
so
it always is.
Yeah, the question is, more than a business, how does Skywalk Group, the two women that own this organization that I have the privilege of working for, how did they invest in the community? And I would say it's so much more complicated than just one thing. And that's important for this discussion, because when people are building their package to try to get teammates to join, when they are, shouting from a mountaintop what they do differently, they oftentimes forget about all of the subtle things that you do without really considering it a part of investing in a package. Yeah. So for example, if you ask Skywalk Group, what are you doing in the community to help? They would probably say off the cuff, right? Well, we do have a nonprofit discount. We prefer and target nonprofits in the area, and then we provide them with that discount because nonprofits have lower budgets and they need support as well. So that's one very easy off the cuff answer of what they do to impact the organization. Yeah. I bet they wouldn't even think to say, well, here are the 30 employees we've had just in the time that I've been there that we have sponsored their volunteer initiatives. We have, for example, I'm a sustainer now, but I used to be in the Junior League of Cedar Rapids. Okay. Every year at our biggest event, they would buy me a table with the Skywalk Group and just contribute to the mission that's important to me. So they have a budget and they give back through their employees. And I think off the cuff, they may not have thought, yes, this is what we're doing to invest in the community. But I think the answer is by supporting the individual dreams of the teammates that work there, they are investing in the community so much more than what I see some companies do, which is I have a budget. Here are two nonprofits that we partner with, 50-50. There's the cash. I'm done.
We did our part. Yeah. Right. Yep.
So that's one big way that they contribute to the community, and by them supporting my dream and mission, by them supporting one of my direct reports was interested in being a part of the leadership for 5 seasons. So it's a leadership program. They sponsored that payment for the application and wrote letters of recommendation. So now that employee, who's my direct report, feels supported by the owners, and I get to retain her as a teammate. So everyone wins. She's off doing great things with leadership, and she's investing in the future.
What a common theme that continues to show up as I talk about like what makes organizations great is it seems common sense, but it seems to continuously show up is that they're investing in the actual individual and what matters most to them versus kind of what you talked about was checking the box. It is what it was before. You mentioned you've been there for a little bit over 8 years or coming up on 8 years. And you also followed that up with, this will be my forever home, which tells me that Skywalk Group is doing something right internally to have a team member say that. Can you expand a little bit maybe on outside of just the nonprofit donations or anything that just like sticks out to you that is like, this is why? And that's really what kind of dig into like, what is it more past the nonprofit support or the Junior League support that they've already shown they truly care about you and what you care about?
Well, I am in HR, so I report to more HR people, and we all think HR. So having 2 HR people build a relationship that isn't just the surface level and getting down deeper, it's almost a no-no for HR people, right? Because we're always supposed to be objective. But my supervisor, one of the owners, she dances that line perfectly. I feel like she would do anything for me if I needed it, both professionally or personally, and vice versa. And we've never compromised any of the lines that, normally come. I feel like I have a personal relationship with her. I don't feel like she's slighting me, but at the same time, it is a little bit of the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain thing. And I have to do that with my direct reports as well. I don't want to burden them with what's going on in my personal life, but at the same time, they may know I'm going through something like my daughter is homesick. So I may not be as available today.
Yes.
And when she's on a video call with me, my direct reports are like, hi, Macklin, how are you today. So she's our
Well, if
unofficial
Macklin comes on and
Yeah.
she wants 30 seconds of fame, like bring it on. I'm a father
She
of 3
has,
young
I mean, if
kiddos.
anyone is interested, you can go to my LinkedIn page and all of the pictures that are on there. I post a team builder that we do once a month. Macklin's in every single one of them.
Let's
She
go.
comes,
I love that.
she comes with us. So she's our mascot. And we may get to this a little bit later about what motivates me and what they did differently for me. But I didn't take a maternity leave. And we can go into that and talk about why.
Let's just dive into that right now. We'll move things around and make that work. But tell me, let's dive into that. Why didn't you take a maternity leave?
I was supposed to, and I was encouraged to, but at the time we were busy. And this is the thing about the Skywalk group that will always keep me forever. Besides that personal relationship, that's just personal enough that I have with the owner to know that I will be supported. The other things, the two I would have to say is autonomy. Being able to make my own decisions, run my own life, feel that I'm not micromanaged. And due to that autonomy, it's gone from a department of 1 to 8 or 9 or 7, depending on the day. And then outside of autonomy, it's the flexibility. So Skywalk Group was started, and one of the 2 women were pregnant at the time. They have valued and let us, even before the pandemic, work from home, name our own hours, be able to flex things, be there for the client, and make life work the way it needed to work. And at the time that I had Macklin, my only child, and probably forever, there was too much to be done. I just had 2 brand new teammates. They needed me. And my boss was saying, you go take those 6 to 8 weeks and you go bond with your child. But that didn't work for me. I like to be in the know. I wanted to be there to support my teammates. And what I had the ability to do was define my own maternity leave. So I took 1 week off.
Interesting.
Slept as much as I could.
Good
and
for
then
you.
what I did was I took the rest of the time, I think it was 12 weeks, and I just worked part-time. So I was using PTO. I was working part-time, clocking in when I needed, because guess what? Babies sleep a lot. And any other organization, even though that was what worked for me, and it's what helped the team subsequently. Other organizations wouldn't have even allowed that flexibility, in which case my mental health, who knows how it'd be with, if I come back and I haven't been checking my email, or 3 people going to resign, which clients do we have? I mean, I don't even know that I would be able to enjoy my leave. So that's one example of how they never asked me to do that, but they allowed me to, because it's what needed to be done.
Yeah, that's an interesting, maternity and paternity leave is obviously a huge topic of discussion, and, arguably it should be longer than most, or it should be provided. Your take on that is really interesting, in that it's truly like it's there. And, I'm going to generally speak, but most individuals would likely probably take it. But you're right, as driven as you are, and as you just kind of described the things that you help your mental health, maybe it's not going to fit for everybody. And again, it goes back to that like individual personalization of, let me do what helps me the most is going to work well. That is,
and I needed, as I was redefining my identity as a mom, to still feel important at work, and still feel that I had something to contribute to society, and keep my mind sharp. And believe me, you talk about most people in the U.S. would take that. My sister lives in Germany, and they have a crazy amount of paid leave for maternity leave. So you should have heard.
Off the top of your head, do you know what it is? Because I would say it's almost arguably close to a year.
Right. Yep. I feel like 6 months, but then she's comparing it to Sweden, which has more. Germany is different. And so it's hard to keep up with everyone. I'm not an employment law expert in Europe, but you're right. The argument is that America in general is not giving enough. However, and I can tell you, my opinion is not popular with other women or mothers. However, it's what worked for me, and I had the ability to make that happen. And if I had another child, I'd do it again.
Well, and that just goes right into what you had talked about with Skywalk Group, giving you the autonomy to make the decisions that are best for you, because me making that decision for you isn't going to help you or anybody else in that scenario. So each to their own in those decisions. And I love, again, it just goes right down into that personalization side of things. All right. You have a unique perspective than most of the individuals that we have brought on the show so far, in the fact that you help other organizations with these things. How do you carry out what with Skywalk Group has done such an amazing job with, as far as focused on their team members, giving them autonomy, freedom, all of that kind of stuff. How do you carry that through to your other organizations where you might not get the final say necessarily, but you bring this sort of education or background to them to say, this is what we are seeing? Tell me how you kind of carry that through to the organizations that you get to serve.
Well, a few things. One, Skywalk Group works with the Corridor Business Journal down in I think that would be Coralville. It might be Iowa City. I believe it's Coralville. Okay. And they are a newspaper who they sponsor this event every year called The Coolest Places to Work. And we as the experts in what that looks like as people who help people build culture, we sponsor that event. We are the keynote speaker, and we get to see what not just a sample population that are our clients do, but what do the quite literally people who are getting awarded coolest places to work, what are they doing and what's their retention look like? So the who wins the coolest places to work is voted on by the employees themselves. So there's no faking or buying into it. It's a survey, and a certain amount of people need to participate in the survey. So we see a lot of those cool things. I can say the main question is, how do you disseminate that? We don't always get to do that. If I see one area in which culture breaks down, and I see it over and over again, it's when the owner themselves have these ideas, but they don't embody what they practice themselves. And all of us are guilty of it. I'm even guilty of it. I want my direct reports not to check their email when they're on vacation, but here I am checking my email. So we all do it.
I feel seen.
I feel personally attacked. Yeah. But that's the thing, is if we truly want to do it and build a culture of what our ideal vision is, we have to live it as leaders as well, as business owners in particular. HR isn't responsible for setting the culture, nor are the managers, although it's very important if they don't see the owners doing it, especially when the owner is asking people to behave a certain way and then they are not. That's where it falls apart. So what we do as consultants is we can come in and say, these things have worked for us. Over here, this organization, all they needed to do was, because there was a survey, the clients and the employees there asked for, you'd be just a little bit cooler to work for if you could put a hammock in the break room so we could take naps. And so they thought, why not? Like, is this an insurance problem? Can we afford it? Will people take naps and abuse it? Let's try it. So they put in a hammock in the break room along with their, what's it called? Like one of those game stations. And, and now they're the coolest. People want to stay because they're willing to not just put a hammock.
I was going to clarify. It's not just because there's a hammock that things are working correctly.
It's because they heard them. Yes. Right? They said, can you do it? And they said, why not? So they're giving it a try. And then when it doesn't work and someone takes a 2-hour snooze, we get a call and then we go in and address it for them. But
so I have to ask then, you talked about it's got to work from the top down. So is the owner or the leader of the organization going in and taking a good nap on that hammock?
I have not seen him take a nap on the hammock, but I have seen them engage in competitions with the little Pac-Man thing they have, like the big Pac-Man. So they'll buy lunch, and then we'll have a long lunch in that room. So
I figured you'd get a really good feeling of what your culture is if the owner or the leader went to sleep and then woke up with Sharpie or without Sharpie on their face.
Gosh, yeah. That's the kind of organization it happened to as well. I would hope that they would use washable like highlighter, but that's the HR person in me. They came back to
well, I know I kind of transitioned a little bit into like personal motivation, and you did talk a lot about your choice around maternity leave, but maybe dive a little bit more in like what drives you and motivates you. Because from a mentor of mine, he once said, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life, is not something that he agrees with. But if you do what you're good at and you enjoy it, you're going to have a lot more fun doing the work that you do, being able to endure the days that are not the most exciting parts of the job. So what continues to motivate you to show up and serve the team that you get to lead, as well as the clients that you get to serve?
That's a good question. And I'll lead off with another unpopular decision or opinion. In HR, people ask in interviews, when you're interviewing for an HR person, what's your favorite part of HR, or why do you do it? And the people who say, I do HR for the people, it's almost always not true. I believe there are others out there that are very inspired by the people.
Yes.
But in the end, if we were only there to advocate just for the people all the time, it would get very, very messy. We need to, outside of just advocating for employees directly, we need to be able to make fair calls. Right? So that comes with what are the policies, who said what, and really dig in. So as much as it is about the people, you also need to be able to remove yourself from any emotions to make some tough calls sometimes. So having said that, I originally got in because I originally went into HR because I liked employment law. I liked finding gray where there needed to be gray and calling it fair when it was black and white. And over time, it really has turned into more about building the team and supporting people. There are a couple movies these days that have really inspired me. One was She Said, and the other one is Bombshell. Those are some movies that are on Netflix or Amazon or something. And
I'm going to have to add those to the list.
Well, yeah, add those to the list. It's about the movement where women were coming forward and saying, I'm being sexually harassed at work. And it's about what it used to be like before I had an opportunity to practice. And seeing those movies, not only does it make my stomach hurt, because of what women and others have had to go through, that is another example of, for the people, why we're doing this. We are not here advocating for women and making sure that men do not abuse power. That's not why I'm here. I am here to make sure that everyone's respected. That includes men. It includes everyone. So that's the difference between saying I'm here for the people and I'm here for a purpose. And I think we're just here to just enforce a purpose.
I love that. You bring up that obviously that Me Too movement was huge, and I've had the fortunate opportunity to actually listen to a couple of the journalists that broke that story at a domestic violence group here in the Kansas City area called Moxa. And it was just really, really eye-opening of everything that did occur and move forward. How do you, and this is not a question that I kind of prepped with or anything along those lines, but how do you remove the emotion of such a serious situation and remove that when you go home from work, so you're not constantly like, I've always had this issue with like differentiation, bringing things that are heavy home, and how do I get that differentiated so that I can be a present father and husband for my children that need me to be dad, while I'm also carrying some really difficult things in my mind, which I don't want to expose them to at their age. Go about how you kind of manage that, because I imagine there's a lot of people in HR that have to differentiate that.
Sure. For whatever reason, it's a strong suit of mine. I think it's because I was divorced growing up and I had to go from one household to the other and just compartmentalize. I think it's a strong suit of mine, but there are a couple tips. So one would be whether you work at home or you work from an office, being able to physically step away from your computer is huge. And people say, oh, I do leave my computer, but it doesn't mean it's not on my mind. I mean, leave your computer at home, close the door behind you, and try to check out. If you need to talk to someone on the way home and debrief, you're welcome to do that. If you go home and do that with your spouse, that's another thing. When I have a particularly awful day, the rule in my industry is you can talk about what happened and you can say, this is my client. You cannot connect the two. So if I really need to vent, I could say, this is what happened today. And the stories I could tell you, I know that this is live, but if you want to hear a crazy story, I'll tell you the one that sticks out in my head right now. But being able to say, did I do what it took, what I needed to do today to just keep people safe and just make sure that everyone is being respected? That's what matters in the end, not so much the rest, but did I do the best I could? And that's where I leave it. The other thing would be when it comes to making a tough call emotionally. So there are lots of investigations we do, in which case it ends up, sorry, my phone is ringing.
And you're fine.
It ends up being, oops, send a voicemail. Well, it's he said, she said. There's no smoking gun. We don't have it on video that he grabbed her, or this man was doing this to this man and he threw a wrench over a wall, thought he would hit him, whatever it is. If there's no smoking gun, that's the tough part, is saying, did a policy get violated here or not? Were people respected or not? And then we have to gauge the severity level. So it's tough, but that's how we mitigate that. I hope that answers
Well,
it.
thank you for like sharing some of that, because that was definitely something that, as you kind of brought that up, it was just top of mind for me. We are kind of getting close to the end of the time of today, and this flew by already, Samantha. So I really appreciate you coming on. And one of the things that we like to do for our guests, just to show our own appreciation and gratitude for coming on, is with my wife's and I's business, More Than a Meal, we like to actually allow you to send a meal to an individual within your organization that maybe deserves it, whether it is a challenging time in life or a celebratory time in life. So if you've got somebody off the top of your head, maybe tell us who that is and why you'd like to gift them a simple meal.
I do have someone off mind, and thank you so much for engaging us in your program and thinking this through and connecting and building a partnership. I'm very excited for this opportunity. I can't wait to find out what's all in that box. And I'd like to give it to a teammate of mine. Her name is Delaney Danke. She was just recently, she's grown in-house with us for about 4 years and was just recently promoted to supervisor. And I think she's 2 weeks
Delaney.
in. And she's discovering how
drinking from the fire.
She's doing great, but yeah, she's discovering what more hours and leading by example. Not that she didn't it before, but supervising others comes with a whole other bandwidth. So I'd love to say thank you to her and do that.
Awesome. Well, I'll connect with you offline, and we'll make sure to get that out to her with the message that you want to send through that, and she'll be able to take a night off and just relax outside of the kitchen and do what she would like to do with that. So with that, Samantha, I cannot thank you enough for coming on. If anybody ever wanted to reach out to you for advice, experience, anything along those lines, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I'd be happy to hear from anyone. It's a part of why I volunteer in the community and why I'm passionate about building the professionalism in the lives of others. My email is srogers, ROGERS, @skywalkgroup.com. And we can start there. You can find me on LinkedIn under Samantha Rogers, and I would love to hear from anyone. Love building those networks and those partnerships. So thank you.
Yeah, you bet. And if anybody does reach out to me, I'll make sure to get them forwarded on to you. But Samantha, thank you so much for the stories, the advice, the takeaways, and also prioritizing your children as well, your daughter, as well, as that is a huge aspect of my life as well. So with that, Samantha, thank you so much for coming on. All right. Next week, we are going to be actually traveling to the Lake of the Ozarks because the Missouri Sherm Association is taking place down at Margaritaville. So we'll see how all of that goes, but we will be on site with Lori, the executive director, next week. That is going to be Thursday at 1:15 p.m. So a little bit earlier than we typically are there, but I'm really excited to dive in and all the work that Lori is doing to continue to grow the HR community, not only just in the Kansas City area or Missouri area, but honestly across the country. So really excited to have her on the show. And again, tune in every single Thursday, typically at 3 p.m. We've got some amazing, amazing guests like Samantha coming up here really soon. And until next time, we'll see you on Thursday.